If you go to trial, if you challenge the claims of the prosecutor, you are likely to face heavier fines and longer punishment. They call this the trial tax, in which case most people, over 90% of people, will just plead guilty and admit to whatever they ask because it is cheaper, it is faster, and it is safer. Breaking news today, which I'm sure many of you have heard, Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. Now, this is a very complicated story, and it's currently developing. I'm seeing the left and the right take this in their obvious tribal direction, so I want to break down some of that rhetoric. But also, again, keep in mind, as a breaking story, some of these facts might change and develop as time goes on. But where I'm at now, I think I'm in a good place to give you a quick run through and then talk about some of the issues around where Flynn is at, what's happening with the Trump-Russia investigation. So first, let's just start with the claim by the FBI to which Flynn has pleaded guilty. According to the official court documents, on or about January 24th, 2017, defendant Michael T. Flynn did willfully and knowingly make materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statements and representations in a matter with the jurisdiction of the executive branch of the government of the United States, to wit, the defendant falsely stated and represented to agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Washington, D.C. that, on or about December 29, 2016, Flynn did not ask the government of Russia's ambassador to the United States to refrain from escalating the situation in response to sanctions that the United States had imposed against Russia that same day. And Flynn did not recall the Russian ambassador subsequently telling him that Russia had chosen to moderate its response to those sanctions as a result of his request. And on or about December 22, 2016, Flynn did not ask the Russian ambassador to delay the vote on or defeat a pending United Nations Security Council resolution, and that the Russian ambassador subsequently never described to Flynn's Russia response to his request. The phone call between Flynn and this ambassador, it was recorded. And so even looking back to the past, this old Washington Post story, FBI needs to explain why Flynn was recorded, Intelligence Committee Chairman says. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee said Tuesday that the most significant question posed by the resignation of National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is why intelligence officials eavesdropped on his calls with the Russian ambassador and later leaked information on those calls to the press. And this is from February 14th. Now, I'm not bringing this up to debate the issue of why he was recorded, but to bring up that it is known that he had these conversations, that the conversations were leaked to the press, and that we know that either he lied or misspoke, however you want to define it, he provided false statements to the FBI to which he is pleading guilty. Now, a lot of people initially started saying he's pleading guilty to a lesser charge because there's a lot worse things that he could be charged with. If the FBI, if Mueller is only charging him with lying to the FBI, it is likely that he is cooperating to the full extent. And so there's a few reasons why he may be cooperating. Now, before I get into that, let's just go to some other reporting. ABC has reported Michael Flynn promised full cooperation to the Mueller team and is prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. ABC News also reporting Michael Flynn is prepared to testify against President Trump, against members of the Trump family, and others in the White House. Additionally, Steve Nelson of the Washington Examiner reported, at Mike Flynn hearing, government attorneys said the Russia contacts he later lied about were made with knowledge of a senior official of the presidential transition team, and, in regards to the UN vote, a very senior member of the transition team. So it is safe to say, it is a fair say that Flynn is testifying against Trump, Trump's family, other members in the White House. He is flipped entirely, and it is likely the reason for this lesser charge, because let's look at the potential other charge of which he is being investigated, but also his son as well. Fox News reported on November 12th, Flynn reportedly being investigated in clear kidnap plot. Former White House National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and his son are reportedly being investigated by Special Counsel Robert Mueller in connection with an alleged multi-million-dollar plot to nab a Muslim cleric in the United States and deliver him to Turkey. People familiar with the investigation told the newspaper that Flynn, a retired Army Lieutenant General, and son, Michael Flynn Jr., were set to get as much as $15 million to deliver cleric Fethullah Gulen to the Turkish government. Now, that is a whole other story that I don't want to get too deep into, but I think it's important to look into why Michael Flynn may have pled guilty and not just jump to conclusions about whether or not he is actually guilty of any of these crimes, but just simply provide some information and context towards his motivations. According to another report, NBC News also reported, and this is back in September, that Mike Flynn's son is subject of a federal Russia probe. Now, Michael Flynn's son denied this, but it has been reported. According to another bit of reporting coming from the Washington Post, you know how I feel about them, but we'll take the reporting for what it is. As part of Flynn's negotiations, his son Michael G. Flynn is not expected to be charged, according to a person with knowledge of the talks. Michael Flynn has released a statement saying, "After over 33 years of military service to our country, including nearly 5 years in combat away from my family, and then my decision to continue to serve the United States, it has been extraordinarily painful to endure these many months of false accusations of treason and other outrageous acts. Such false accusations are contrary to everything I have ever done and stood for. But I recognize that the actions I acknowledged in court today were wrong. And through my faith in God, I am working to set things right. My guilty plea and agreement to cooperate with the special counsel's office reflect a decision I made in the best interests of my family and of our country. I accept full responsibility for my actions." Now, making false statements to the FBI is a serious charge. It is a felony. But the other charges that he was potentially facing are significantly worse. But let's look at making false statements to the FBI. 18 U.S.C. 1001A, except as otherwise provided in the section, whoever in any matter within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislative, or judicial branch of the government of the United States, knowingly and willfully, 1. Falsifies, conceals, or covers up by any trick, scheme, or device a material fact, makes any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation, or makes or uses any false writing or document knowing the same to contain any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or entity, shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 5 years, or, if the offense involves international or domestic terrorism, as defined in section 2331, imprisoned not more than 8 years or both. Now again, keep in mind the story is developing, things may have changed by the time this video comes out, but hopefully that overview of the current situation is sufficient, and there's a few things I want to add to this. I always want to bring up something called the trial tax whenever it comes to high-profile cases like this. We're seeing the left say, this is it. This is him, you know, Flynn coming out and now testifying against Trump in the White House. And the people on the right are saying, no, this is a desperate attempt by Mueller to try and get anything they can. Lying to the FBI is not collusion. I don't care whether you're leaning, you know, to the left or to the right. We're not going to say anything about whether this is proof of collusion or anything like that. Certainly, if Mueller has agreed to give him a lesser charge and not charge his son, clearly there's an exchange happening here, and there may be something coming, but maybe not. And I think it's wrong for both sides to speculate, but of course they will, and you know that's their prerogative. I always want to bring up the trial tax. Simply because Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty does not mean he is guilty of anything. That's an entirely different argument. You can look at the facts, you can look at the reporting, make up your own mind about whether you feel he is or is not guilty of committing these crimes. Michael Flynn has released a statement saying he knows what he did is wrong. He acknowledged this, so that can be fair. But I think it's an important point to bring up the trial tax, which means if you go to trial, if you challenge the claims of the prosecutor, you are likely to face heavier fines and longer punishment. They call this the trial tax, in which case most people, over 90% of people, will just plead guilty and admit to whatever they ask because it is cheaper, it is faster, and it is safer. My opinion on all of this, take it for what it is, but I think it would be naive to assume that there is nothing here. With this guilty plea, with us hearing that Flynn has said Trump directed him to contact the Russians, it looks like there is a greater than chance probability that we are moving into this territory. We remember Papadopoulos, and he had made contact, and there was insinuations, there were assertions that he was ordered to make contact by other members of the Trump campaign, and that now what we're hearing is that Flynn has stated that as a candidate, Donald Trump ordered him to contact the Russians. Keep in mind, contacting foreign governments and officials, it's not illegal. What's being challenged here is whether or not Russia was trying to interfere in our elections and whether or not the Trump team was working with them. There's other assertions here that Flynn may have violated the Logan Act, which prevents private citizens from coordinating with foreign governments over some kind of issue or crisis. In the case of trying to de-escalate following the sanctions imposed by Obama, there's an implication that there was a violation of the Logan Act, which is why many people believe that Flynn may have lied. No one has ever been convicted under the Logan Act, at least as far as I've read, and the real issue here is that Flynn lied. It's not the most significant charge. It in no way proves collusion, but we're hearing little bits of information coming out now, the little grains of sand. Again, my final thought on the matter, I know a lot of people want to defend Donald Trump and they believe that this is a witch hunt and that there is no collusion. I know people on the left want to immediately just jump right off the diving board and say, this is it, this is proof. Every little grain of sand thrown into the heap is absolute evidence of collusion. I know a lot of journalists who believe it's definitive. I know a lot of journalists who challenge the narrative. As we saw in the Project Veritas video, you have some people at Washington Post say, we're just not there yet. But keep in mind, we are getting grains of sand, right? The analogy I use is how many grains of sand make a heap. And every time we get little bits of information, you see another grain of sand added to that pile, and eventually we will have a heap, and that heap will be the circumstantial evidence which shows there may in fact be collusion. I am not saying there is collusion. I'm absolutely not. I am just saying, don't let your tribalism push you in the direction of assuming this is factually true and we're going to see Trump get out of office or something like that. And don't let your tribalism block you from seeing that we have now several indictments which may lead to people testifying against Trump, the Trump family, and others. Which means whether or not you think you're right, whether or not you think you're wrong, someone testifying against someone else provides evidence, circumstantial evidence that there may be something here. So the court system is complicated. Just because we see these cases, just because we see indictments, doesn't mean anything is true per se. It doesn't mean that anyone's guilty. It just means that the court can prove beyond a reasonable doubt, or that the individual being charged feels it's safer to just plead guilty. It doesn't mean any of the testimony is true. It doesn't mean any of it's not true. We're simply trying to find if someone committed a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So I always try to get people to simmer down, calm down a little bit. This is serious. This is a big breaking story. It's a worldwide trend. Don't dismiss it, and at the same time, don't assume this is a nail in the coffin. It's just another grain of sand. It's a small happening in the bigger picture, and only time will tell. Michael Flynn is expected to be sentenced in 3 months, so we still have a long way to go. And for the third time, this is a breaking story. Things might change. Stay tuned, because if need be, I will have updates for you. But I think for a lot of people, this was a bit predictable. And let me know what you think in the comments below. So the political debate, it's always fascinating because people are taking this in such different directions. You know, so again, comment below. We'll keep the conversation going. You can follow me for breaking news and live streams from around the world on Twitter at Timcast. If you want to support my work, go to timcast.com/donate. Give whatever you'd like. Give nothing at all. My videos are always free and available every day at 4 p.m. And make sure to check out my second channel, my backup channel, in the description below if you've made it this far. I would really appreciate it. If anything happens to this channel, I'll be posting there, and I'll also be posting more irreverent and fun and more lifestyle stuff there too. So I appreciate all of you who support my work and who have watched, and I will see you all tomorrow.